Hi guys, I've been asked to start the show so that hopefully the sound of my voice would either allow you guys to sleep or bring more guys into the room to come and sleep. Yeah. Anyway, I'm Julian and I am CEO and co-founder of Kit Protocol. And today, my little short speech is about why we need to decentralize AI. Okay, essentially the main reasons why decentralization of AI is necessary. Next slide, please. So a little bit about us. Kit Protocol is spun out of an, I guess you call it a very old as feasible, AIOG company. So we've been consulting with big data and AI solutions since 2019. Okay, on big data since 2015 actually. These are some of our clients that you see on screen. And Kit Protocol is our Web3 product extension of what we have been working on these many years. Next slide, please. So today, maybe it's just in 15 minutes, I'll try to really very quickly cover why is it that we find ourselves in this space where suddenly, besides the advent of AI, there seems to be a need for the decentralization of the technology and the ownership within AI. So we will cover a few of these things here, okay, I'm not going to read the contents. Let's move to the next slide. So it's AI plus human, okay? There's no longer just human, okay? So previously when a lot of tech development is relatively done in the deterministic fashion, meaning that you decide what you want the tech to do for you and you create the tech that does that. But in future, it wouldn't be just humans determining that. It's AI plus human. It's AI plus a lot of things. Next slide. What is the difference between a hammer and a boy? Okay, it's an absurd question. It's meant to be absurd. And in a case of, we think of it in the context through the lenses of problem solving, right? So a tool like a hammer is made for purpose, right? You know kind of what is the end result you want. Okay, you want a heavy weight on one end, you're trying to drive something into another platform, another surface, and you build a tool like the hammer exactly to your specifications. But in the context of problem solving, through a lens of problem solving, you don't do that with AI, okay? AI is often like a young child, a young boy, okay? Intelligent young boy, intelligent young child, okay? Young girl, for that matter. But you don't tell him exactly how you do to solve the problem. You train them to solve the problem themselves. So it's a wholly different way of building. It's going to be in the future. Next slide. Is there one before this? Sorry. Yeah. So we are moving into what we call this AI plus era, in which all of human activity essentially is integrated with AI. Okay, whether you're writing an email, you're writing a report, okay, you're writing a piece of code, you're going to use AI in some parts of it. So it's not just yourself and your creativity and your human brain at work. It is very much you augmented by AI. And AI has pervasive presence in the sense that it is or it will be integrated into every single layer of the tech stack, okay, from hardware, from your compute, to your applications. Now, AI, however, is different because it gets better at getting better. It's different from all technologies from before. It's like it gets better and getting better, and it gets faster at getting faster. It's recursive, right? And what that means is that it will radically change, okay, the nature of how we work and how we live. And AI itself might be the last wholly human-driven innovation, okay? Meaning humans came out with AI, subsequently everything will have AI as part of the innovation process. So this is a phenomenon that's going on now. Less a technical phenomenon, more like an economic phenomenon, which is these were all headlines from last year, okay, actually. So a lot of lawsuits were launched against primarily OpenAI at the time, but not exclusively OpenAI, in which OpenAI was accused of taking a lot of data that didn't belong to it, scraping them from open internet, breaking every paywall that they can find in order to train their AI. So what does this mean? Okay, next slide. It's September, around this time last year, actually. So besides the fact that they were getting sued for stealing the content, OpenAI pushed out this piece of news, which I think till today is still not very, very heavily known, not widely aware, in that OpenAI still has an open policy called the Copyright Shield, in which if you are an OpenAI customer, they are encouraging you to take data and put it onto their servers, okay? And if you get sued for copyright infringement, you can apply under Copyright Shield so that they will pay for your legal bills, right? So the hunger for data, your data, everyone's data, okay, is real. They really, really want this data such that they can get sued on one side for this activity and open up a corporate policy to encourage the exact thing they're getting sued for on the other. So I've been in the internet a long time, since the late 90s, okay? I'm sorry to admit, or embarrassed to admit, but I've never seen behavior like this. It's almost as if they already knew they were going to win all of these lawsuits, right? And guess what? I didn't have time to add in this slide, but last week, what happened was the first of the lawsuits from last year, the first ones got heard and the results came out. OpenAI won. OpenAI won the lawsuits against the guys that they stole the data from, because the court said that it's very hard to calculate the loss. And this is a the best evidence we can have on what's going to be on the next slide, please. We are already living in the AI monopoly, okay? They did all these because they knew they were going to win, okay? They had all the arguments already in place, and arguments was obvious. In fact, last year when we were discussing this, we were already saying that the first of every lawsuit of that, first of any economic damage lawsuit is always very difficult to win because it's very hard to calculate the loss. That's how AI monopolies can form, and AI monopolies are dangerous in these ways. First is bias. So all AI is biased. Any AI we're using today has bias because they're trained by humans, and humans are biased, right? They're trained based on sets of data produced by humans, and they're all inherently biased. The biasness and the biases can manifest itself in the training, okay, or in the guardrails. The things you can say, or the things you would say, and the things you cannot say. There's a lot of biases inherent in all AI. This is, I guess, not as controversial or not as scary a point, except for the fact that a lot of it is dangerous because if you think of what people use AI for. People use AI to get answers, right? What do we used to use search engines for? We used to find sources of answers using search engines. You type a question into search engines, you get a list of web pages. You decide, or the search engine ranks them by relevance, and then you decide which particular page has the answer that you want. But when you key in a question into AI, an answer comes out, right? The biases are inherent, and if you're not aware of these biases, very, very dangerous, because it goes to the very meaning of what truth is if you rely on AI for answers. Recursive self-improvement, I mentioned this earlier, it gets faster at getting faster, gets better at getting better, okay? Which means the power or the influence exponentially increases. Irreversible data theft. So talking about the lawsuits just now, about how they were scraping the entire internet for it. Frankly, we weren't a fan, even though we were very against this, obviously. We took a very, in principle stance against this behavior, okay? But it's too late. Because if I took your data to train my model right now, after the training, I no longer need your data. Okay, the weights in my model have changed. My model has absorbed the nutrition, okay, if you like, of that data, and I don't need your data anymore. You can take it back, which means data theft is irreversible. Okay, and if I'm using my privately owned model to generate economic value for myself, I've already gotten what I wanted from your data. Regulatory capture is the starting point in which all of the AI oversight committees in the US and EU, okay, at least, the members of those oversight or supervisory committees are the very companies they should be supervising, okay? OpenAI is on the boards of all of them. So, ironic, it's a fox guarding the hen house, right? And that is, I think, the beginning. The beginning we were saying we are already living in the AI monopoly, and the fact that they won the lawsuits, I think, basically gave evidence to that fact. Next slide, please. So they want to, what are they trying to do? What they're trying to do is to control and own, okay? Control first and then own eventually. 3 levers of AI value creation, which basically can be simply understood as data, models, and apps, okay? This obviously sits on top of the compute layer, okay? Which also has ownership, but it's owned by whoever owns the hardware. But the AI companies, those that own the models, are trying to have ownership of all of these, right? And if you own as much of these as possible, then you can achieve a monopolistic position. Next slide, please. Which means the solution for it is somehow, it is technical, of course, and obviously we do build a technical solution for that. But it starts with the position that we need to exert our ownership. Okay, assert our ownership how? I have to tell these companies that I own this and you can't take it without asking me or without paying me for it. If we don't, we leave it on the open internet, the exact result, it would be what happened last week, in which they win the lawsuits. Oh, you left it up for everyone, it's in the public domain, so therefore I can take it, right? You have to assert the rights of ownership. Otherwise, you're just a consumer, no matter what you actually created. Next slide. But what does it mean to own something, right? So there are different economic theories. These are two that I like, you know. The prevailing one is a bundle of rights. To own something means you have all of these rights bundled up together. Then that's considered ownership. Or there's a recent professor who just came up with the right to exclusive use. That means only I can use it, or only I can decide who else can use it. But regardless of this, it's very, very clear that either of these definitions, by either of these definitions, we actually won't own very little of what we digitally publish, okay, of our digital identities even on the internet. So how do we get it back? Next. To know how to get it back, we first have to think of what is capable of being owned, okay? This is a chart done by A16Z on the landscape, the entire AI landscape. So it's a very complicated landscape, as you can see, okay? Next slide. But again, the three things, next slide please. The three things that can be owned goes back to data, the models, and the applications. So all of the attention has always been put on the models, and rightly so, because without the models is the AI. Without the models, there is no AI, right? When we talk about AI, we're talking about primarily the models. But these two are equally important, okay? So on the application side, why is that important? Applications are what give the models instructions to give an answer, to produce an answer. So ChatGPT, the one that took the world by storm, that is an app. It's tied to a model, it's linked to a model, whether it's 4.0 or 3 or 3.5 or 3, whatever, right? The apps is the end that reaches the consumer, that the consumers use. The apps is the one that creates a user experience. And if we are all, I'm sure, all users of ChatGPT or have used ChatGPT before. And the user experience is great. And that's on the app side, right? And the way it responds is different from how the model responds natively, which you know if you had plugged the API directly into the model, it's not as human-like, it's not as smooth. And the applications, importantly, are also the end that collects the money, okay? Because it's a user interface. If there is money to be collected, it's collected at the app side. And then data, last but not least, okay? So everyone knows that data is the lifeblood of AI in some way. But to be specific, data is used in AI in two ways. One, in training, and the other one in RAG. Training is to make your AI smarter, but retrieval augmented generation is the process in which you keep the data separate from the model, and you just use the model, okay, the brain, to retrieve relevant data chunks from a external knowledge spec. Think of it as a book, okay? The model doesn't need to own the book, but the model needs to understand how to retrieve relevant chunks from a book to answer a question that you might have, you know, like reading a book. So we are particularly focused actually on retrieval augmented generation. So these are the three components that we believe create the fundamental value in AI and therefore should be owned. And the reason why, Kip, as we mentioned just now, we started in, well, not in Web3, okay, our AI solutions was on the traditional internet, okay. But it became very clear to us that obviously Web3 is the only path for ownership. Why we had to use Web3 is open source doesn't give ownership. Okay, open source is the reverse. Open source is kind of like, you know, everyone can own it, right? But if we wanted to assert ownership, then we have to go the Web3 route. Next slide. But when we are trying to decentralize this, okay, decentralize AI assets, we immediately run into a couple of problems, okay? The first one is, okay, so what does it mean decentralized? Means you tokenize an asset. You tokenize a model, you tokenize an application, or you tokenize a data set. Tokenizing is easy, actually. Tokenizing is not difficult at all. But what do you do after you tokenize, right? So let's say you have those three things. You end up with 3 NFTs or 3 tokens. And what do you do with it? You sell it. Who's going to buy it? It has no economic value. It only has economic value if it's strung together, if it's linked together to make a single AI product. Which means the first thing is they had to connect. Tokenized AI assets, whether they are models or apps or data sets, they need to connect to each other so that they can continue to create economic value. Second, the money problem. Why do you want to connect the data sets and the apps and the models in the first place? Well, clearly because you think it's a product that people will pay for. Otherwise, why would you do that? Why an industry wouldn't form, okay, just on pure, I don't know, the goodness of your heart, I suppose. I mean, open source movement did, but the open source movement was also full of people who were doing this for a living, and they often did this as a side project. So we needed to solve the money problem, because the money problem exists because when in a centralized framework, these 3 things are all living on one server and sometimes owned by one entity, which means there's no need to split money. But in a situation where the models, the apps, and the data sets are owned by different people, which is often the case, you need a trustless and permissionless way to split the money, so thereby solving the money problem. And last is ownership and security problem, which is who owns what, which is solved by Web3, and security, whether it's secure. Next one. So this is the last big slide. The rest of it is pretty easy. But what KIP achieves, okay, in this diagram, what it shows is a typical data interaction in AI, how these 3 pieces actually work together. So on the bottom left corner, you have the apps. On the top, you have the models. And on the right, you have the data and knowledge bases. So arrow that comes in that shows the user revenues, just think of it as a query. A person is asking a question to an app, which is a chatbot, right? The chatbot gets a question, it throws the question over to the model. The model understands the question and determines which parts of it can answer already natively with its own training, and which parts of it needs an external data set to answer. It then retrieves the relevant chunks from the external data set. The model packages the answer one time. It throws it to the chatbot. The chatbot packages it one more time for formatting, tone, guardrails, or whatever, and delivers it back to the user. So this is a very, very typical interaction, okay, when you are, sometimes it doesn't involve external data set. But if it did, then this would be how the data pings and is transferred. So if all of these 3 items were, or these 3 assets were in one centralized server, then collection of money isn't a problem. But if it isn't, and they are owned separately, okay, token gated independently, belonging to different owners, then what you need is a protocol that can record that this question, in order to answer this, in order to produce the answer for this question, different parties have contributed to it. They either contributed inference or they contributed data. And that recording needs to then be translated to money, which is a split of whatever revenues was paid in the first place. Next question. This I won't cover, okay? This is just a way about how we split the money, okay? And in summary, we, under the KIP protocols framework, every single token that represents an AI asset also represents drawing rights on a common pool. That means revenues are paid into a common pool. Every single token essentially represents drawing rights. So they all go into one pool first, and if you own this NFT that's contributed, the on-chain records basically show that you can withdraw this amount from the pool. Next. Okay. So AI obviously affects every industry. These are all the numbers thrown around by consultants. Nobody knows whether they're true or not. But what is clear is that it is going to be used, whether officially, whether top-down, whether it's like, you know, enforced by the organization, encouraged by organization, or just by consumer choice. Okay, it's going to be used in every way. We do, however, have, at KIP, we do, however, have a focus. Our first focus is in education. And the reason for that is education is where the AI use cases are extremely clear. And when we say AI use cases, it doesn't just mean that you can use AI there, because you can use AI anywhere. It's that the clients can see the commercial value of it and they are prepared to pay for it, okay? you could say arguably a lot of, well, a lot of these industries is also true, but we think in education is a more untapped opportunity with a shorter sales cycle, okay? So we have, through our, I would say, extended sales network, we have already around 60 universities that are using our technology. Yeah, and we stay out of the medical industry, even though it's a very interesting place to do AI. It's because of legal regulations, too many regulations. I think my partner Jen just now was mentioning a lot. Too many regulations involving patient data for a startup to be able to move very, very quickly. Next. Okay. This is not an education. This is not AI girlfriends, okay? There was the next slide is on education, but this one is, it's a partner that we have, okay? This partner is called Moimate. Moimate is one of the larger AI companion chatbots, AI companion platforms, okay, in Web 2. They are moving to Web 3, and through the process I described earlier, they are decentralizing parts of their tech stack, okay? Progressively, the entire thing will be totally decentralized very soon. And the reason why we found this very interesting, okay, I should have talked more about entertainment, okay, just now, it's that we have, okay, so KIP is, I guess, part of the Animoca ecosystem. We are the official AI partner for Open Campus and for a lot of, and for Mochaverse and for a lot of Animoca companies. So we talk to a lot of gaming studios, and we talk a lot about AI plus gaming and all that. We think the future of AI-powered entertainment probably wouldn't look like the games of today. And I think my insight or my new learning into that was when I looked at the, sorry, one more slide back, please. Yeah, moved it. Was on the stickiness of the users of Moimate was insane. Okay, so like as I said, I've been in the internet a long time. So the kind of stickiness that AI agent or AI chatbot platforms have is far beyond anything. It's similar to games and sometimes beyond, because there's no start and an end. Often games have a start and an end, you know, you're completing a level. It's so addictive and it's so sticky, and that's also why we invested into Moimate. I think that the level of immersion is offered by AI companions is more, possibly more than what can be done by a human. So, and very sad to say, you know, some poor kid killed himself because his AI girlfriend broke up with him. That's the level of immersion. I mean, it's a sad example, but that's the level of immersion that you can get. You don't get it. I don't think you get it from losing a level on, you know, Red Dead Redemption or something. So that's very, very interesting, I think, area to look in. Next one. Education. So Open Campus. We are launching Open Campus University, which is essentially Udemy or Coursera in Web3 on the new EDU chain. So what we are doing is we're managing a $10 million grant to bring on professors to basically populate this platform, and the whole thing will be built on KIP contracts and KIP tech. Next one. Great, that's it. If you're interested in learning more, that caught me by surprise. I thought there were like 3 more slides. Please, the QR codes are there for our Twitter, and I'm very happy to, you know, speak with anyone if you're interested in learning more about what we do. We will be launching the whole product with the token very, very soon. Thank you so much.